Hi, Pete. Welcome to the Nova Talks podcast. And in this podcast, we're going to be going over your business, everything that you've done in your life, and some of the challenges you faced, as well as some of the successes that you had. And why don't we start off by having you just introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi, Joey. Thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Pete Marin, and I've been an airbrusher for about 33 years now. And I started the business that I'm currently in probably about 12 years ago. So we specialize in events now. We do party favors live at events. So we manage a team of airbrush artists nationwide.
Very nice. And when did you get into this industry?
Like I said, I started airbrushing, like I said, about 33 years ago. So I think that would have been 1992, somewhere around there. Most of what I did was retail. So I worked in a mall and at a beach location. Wherever there was high traffic, it was an ideal place to have a retail airbrush set up. I worked for someone else in the beginning. Eventually bought the company off my boss and ran it with a friend of mine for a good, I think it was about 10 years. And then I finally sold the company and moved south to Florida. I was chasing sun because I grew up in Maine and lived probably about 10 to 15 years in New Hampshire and got tired of the snow and the cold weather. So I was really attracted to Florida and the warm weather. Plus, my dad was a retired teacher, so he would go down there and I would visit him. And I finally made the move. So when I made the move, I did the solo airbrush operation in a mall. And it wasn't too long after I had a customer approach me and ask me if I could paint at his son's bar mitzvah. And that was my first opportunity. I'd never really considered doing events until that moment. It was pretty rough in the beginning, I have to admit, because I was sort of, creating a new way of doing airbrush business for myself. So I had a lot to learn and things to prepare. And over the years, it just got busier, and I had to ask for help for other artists because I was getting booked up. Obviously, I couldn't be in two places at once. So I slowly grew my team. And I would say for the first 8 years, it was really slow build up. I wasn't completely focused on events. I was sort of a jack of all trades when it came to airbrush. People would approach me and say, can you paint a mural? Can you do a t-shirt? Can you paint my helmet? I would say yes to all of it. And it was only when I decided to specialize and really focus my efforts on events that things started to take off for me. So that was a major lesson in my business career, is just focus gets results.
Okay.
So
Very interesting.
no regrets there. So I would say since probably 2018, I've been solely focused on events and changed my business name to match, which is Airbrush Events, so that there was no confusion that that's what we did. That's what we focused on.
How would you describe the company now, the company's mission within one sentence, now that you're focused specifically on events and being very personalized?
Yeah, we provide a platform for artists to pursue a career in art. Simple as that. I know from personal experience, a lot of airbrushers just want to focus on their art. And if you want to be successful in this career, and isn't easy to make money these days as an airbrush artist, it's sort of a dying trade, unfortunately. You have to become proficient in sales, marketing, and all the business operations as well. So it was a real challenge for me, but honestly, I know I've always wanted to own a business of my own. And so my interests and aptitudes were more towards owning the business and less towards the art. I consider myself a craftsman as opposed to an artist. I'm not a pure artist. Like, I don't go home and say, I can't wait to create something today. It's just not my nature. However, I'm always, scheming about how I can improve my business, the systems, the technology, the customer support, stuff like that. That's really what I'm into. So I thought there might be an opportunity for me to, again, just kind of lay everything out for an artist. Like, hey, you can work for us. We'll take care of all the business stuff, the marketing, the customer support, the contracts, the training, even the equipment. So you could just walk in and start doing events with us in a short amount of time. and earning a career. So that's what we're focusing on.
When you were younger, did you love the actual art at that point, or were you still just focused on how you could build a great business?
Right. I would say early on, I grew up in the country. It was like northern Maine where I grew up. So my friends were living quite far away, and I had to find ways to entertain myself. So I used to draw a lot as a kid. My dad was an artist. He did a lot of painting. He's also a musician and a writer, very creative person. So I probably got a lot of his talents from him. My mom was more into business, actually. So I think I learned a lot from her for business stuff because she was a real estate agent. And yeah, I would say in high school, I exceeded in art, and a lot of my teachers and peers and my family were sort of pressuring me to go to art school. I fought that. I'm not sure why. I guess deep down I knew that that wasn't the path for me exactly, and yet maybe 5 years out of high school, out of college, I ended up being an airbrush artist anyway. Sort of fell back into my talents, and it was fun and rewarding for many years. I'd say about 10. But if anyone who works in retail probably knows it's a tough field, can burn you out, because I was working long hours in a mall and then eventually a beach, which the beach atmosphere is quite fun actually, but still retail can burn you out because it's a grind. So eventually, even that, I figured I do enjoy the airbrush, but I don't know if I can do this retail thing anymore. And I actually quit for a while. I did real estate for a good 5 years. And that was right around the time when we were going through a credit crisis, is like 2005 to 2010. And the housing market crashed. And, I struggled as a real estate agent as a result. I fell back into airbrushing as a safety net. But I was lucky enough to reinvent it. That was about the time when I was first asked for, to do that bar mitzvah. And I found another avenue that I thought I could enjoy and develop, because there's not a lot of us that do what we do. There's a small pool of airbrush artists in the country, and there's an even smaller pool that specialize in events. And at the time when I was doing it, there was even fewer. I feel like it's growing since then. We'll wait and see. But yeah, that's how I transitioned from one to another.
Do you feel that the real estate period in your life was a hidden opportunity? Did you learn from it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some skills there that I learned. Persistence is one of them. I got comfortable with sales. I did door knocking. I did cold calls. Frankly, I don't do any of that. No door knocking or cold calls in this business. But it taught me what was necessary. Sometimes all the things that come with business aren't fun, but you do them anyway, because that's just part of what we do. I learned a lot about marketing. I read a lot of books on business and sales and marketing. So yeah, it wasn't a complete waste. At the time, I was really discouraged about finally giving up on real estate, because I thought that I was going to make a career out of that. But in retrospect, no regrets.
Good. Good. There's a lot to take away from that as well. So if there was one myth that you could just delete about art, and I'm going to ask you the same about business in a second, what would that be?
One myth about art. Well, if I could adapt that to airbrush art, it's a good question. A lot of people come to us. Well, they don't actually. A lot of people don't even know what an airbrush is, believe it or not, and they assume that it's the same as graffiti. And graffiti is more of a style than it is a technique, I guess. Because you can do graffiti on a T-shirt, do lettering that looks like graffiti on a T-shirt, I should say. But we're not using the same tools, obviously. You're not using a spray can. We're using an airbrush. An airbrush is quite a fine instrument. It's like a spray gun, but you can get really fine detail. You can get anything from a pencil line to something that's probably 1 or 2 inch stroke. So there's not a lot of mess. I think a lot of people would think that we couldn't possibly have this event with airbrush in our house or in this venue because of the mess. It's not messy at all, and it barely makes, well, it doesn't make any fumes. It might make a mist of paint, but it's so slight you wouldn't even notice it. There's no odor, there's no toxic fumes. And we paint indoors all the time for, large events. That might be one of the biggest misconceptions. And I guess we're fighting against another misconception, is that it's messy, and it can be. I've seen some airbrush artists, roll into an event with their equipment and they spread out a big, like a throw tarp on the ground in case of spills. And they come and they start filling their bottles at the event or trying to clean out their airbrushes. We have a system in place, and the equipment we use is definitely trying to prevent that. We want to remove the stigma that if you hire an airbrush artist, they're going to make a mess. I'm a stickler about that because I know how important it is for expensive venues. For example, like a synagogue, if we're doing a bar mitzvah, or the Ritz-Carlton, if we're doing a corporate event, they need to know that their carpets and their drapes aren't going to be ruined. So it's very important for us to not only be clean, but look clean as we walk in. We have our uniforms, we have matching equipment. There are processes we use when we have to, say, fill a paint bottle that would minimize mess. So that's, I guess, one misconception we're fighting to change.
Good answer. And it's actually funny when you brought that up, because I remember when I was little, it must have been probably 8 or 9, I went to one of my friend's bar mitzvahs, and they had a airbrush artist there that made me a shirt, and I loved it. They put some kind of instrument on it, but I remember that.
Nice.
It just popped into my head.
Was that at a beach or a theme park, maybe?
That would be funny if you were there, but it was at it was at a nightclub that was empty. They rented it out, so it was, family friendly. But yeah. So what's one myth about entrepreneurship that you would get rid of if you could?
It's not the smartest. It's not the person who has gone to college for business that matters. It's not even sometimes talent that determines whether you're going to be successful or not. I think it's just fortitude. I've heard it described as starting a business is like jumping off a cliff and building your airplane on the way down. And that feels like what we've been doing. It's very easy to overplan, think that you don't have enough studies, enough knowledge, enough preparation, enough planning to get started. And I think it's quite the opposite. I think you should jump in feet first, do your first sale, and then work out the problems from there. It'll become obvious what's most important after you've done your first sale. And it's never changed for us. I mean, we've worked out a lot of problems. I feel our systems are very strong. But we have a culture of learning and constant improvement. Like for example, I meet with my operations team. My operations team is the people who are in direct contact with our clients and organize the events, schedule the artists, and so on. So once a week we have a meeting, and we call it pain points or friction points. I ask everyone on the team, what are the friction points that you encountered this week? And it really doesn't matter how small. I ask that everyone come with at least 2 friction points. So we write them down. We come up with some possible solutions in the meeting. And if we don't have a good solution, we'll put it on the back burner, but we're not going to forget it. We're going to write everything down, and we're going to solve them. And bit by bit, week by week, our systems improve. And over the course of years, we have models in place. We've implemented more technology and more training to make sure that we never encounter those problems again. And I think that's it. I mean, you just You always have to be thinking ahead for the next improvement, and you just have to have the fortitude. The hardest part of starting a business, is just getting off the ground. It's like an airplane. They're going to spend most of their fuel just getting off the ground, but once they're at altitude, cruising is easy. I feel like we've met that part where we're finally cruising, but now we're at a different point in our career or in our business where we're trying to scale. Like, we've got our systems down. We need to build more systems in order to scale. When for us, scaling means getting more artists nationwide. We have, I think we're in 9 states right now, but we have plans for much more than that. And that's where it starts to get difficult, because you're starting to, your network is so wide, and distributing information and training and getting feedback becomes more of a challenge. We have some solutions with that, thanks to technology. But I would guess that would probably be where we're at in our business right now.
Okay. And which part of your business keeps you up at night the most when it comes to scaling? Is it sales? Is it support? Is it marketing? Is it product? What is it?
I think for a lot of businesses, it would be marketing. And I'm grateful that's not one of them for us. It's ironic that when you specialize, sometimes you become more in demand. At first you think, I want a business that appeals to everyone. But I find the opposite logic is true, where if you specialize, the people who really need you will find you. And that's exactly what happened with us. So marketing is not one of those things. We get tons of leads every day. Not everyone ends up being a customer, but we end up processing lots of leads. So I would say right now, the things that are keeping me up at night is recruiting and training. Recruiting artists has never been a problem for us as well, lucky for me. I think a lot of artists, like I said, the airbrush community is quite small. And we all kind of watch each other and see each other online. And it's no secret that we're expanding and that we're always hiring new artists. So the artists tend to come to us. And it's just a matter of screening the right artists at that point. And for our operations department, not that difficult, but we're not hiring nearly as often for them. However, like I said, training is an issue, especially when you have to train people at a distance, because all of us work remotely. And thank God for things like this, video chats. We use Google Meet a lot, Zoom. I think without that, this business would be really difficult. So our operations team and I meet, once a week in a video call, and occasionally we will have team-wide meetings where everyone kind of jumps on a Zoom call. Probably do that only once a year now. In the beginning, we did it more. But what I would like to see, and we are currently working on it, is something that's more of virtual training or self-guided training for our artists. So once we onboard a new artist, they can just watch a series of videos that are sort of arranged in a logical order. And, we generally hire artists that are experienced with airbrush. So training them on how to airbrush is not usually the challenge, although we've done that. It's more about, how do you do an event? And how do you work with airbrush events? What do you do if the client asks you to stay overtime? What do you do if you're running late? What are the SOPs, the standard operating procedures for certain circumstances? What do you do after an event? Well, you got to fill out an invoice and submit your feedback form so we can improve our services. That's another way we can improve what we do, is getting feedback from the artists, stuff like that. So it's the training right now that we're working on. And those two things, training for artists and operations, will help us scale a lot faster. We've sort of worked out the equipment, which is something we also provide for our artists. Now we just have to work out the training. And I think scaling will be a lot easier. So we're still hiring artists, but it's clunky. I got to get on the phone with them. It's back and forth emails. Sometimes they learn as they go. like trial and error, which is not ideal. Obviously, I don't want them to be making mistakes at events, but the current state of our training program means that that will happen. Like I said, jump off the cliff and build your plane on the way down. It's kind of what we're doing.
I love that quote.
Yeah.
And if you're comfortable sharing, you don't have to, but how many people are you onboarding? How many artists are you onboarding
Right.
on a monthly basis?
On a monthly, probably less than once a month, one a month. Yeah, definitely. Right now, we only have 25 artists. It's probably more than any other airbrush team out there. I'd be willing to bet that. And like I said, they're scattered throughout 9 different states. A big cluster of them is from Florida because that's where I started. We're very well established in Florida, but we're building other markets. And that's part of the reason why I'm living in Las Vegas right now is I'm trying to build a West Coast market. So we have 25 artists, and there have been years, like last year, for example, I just said, no more hiring. We need to work on our systems because I didn't want to put the cart before the horse. Let me work out some of the bugs before we, invite new artists. This year, we do plan on hiring at least 3 or 4 more. And if we can really nail down the training, I think I could just open the floodgates, honestly. Like, we don't market ourselves for new artists. We're not actively searching for artists. It happens more organically. And that's fine for now. At some point, I'd like to see the team have about 100 artists in 27 or 25 metro areas throughout the United States. That's the goal. Probably take about 5 years, I'm guessing.
Question there. Do you have an unconventional interview question that you ask new hires when they come on?
Well, I'm not sure how unconventional it is, but it might seem unconventional to them because their artistic ability, believe it or not, is low on the scale of importance for me. It's not unimportant. I would say they need a minimal level of expertise. But I've noticed that whenever we do events, whether it's a new artist or an experienced artist, we get great reviews from both, depending on whether or not things went as planned. Right? The planning of the event is important. Did they show up on time? Were they having a good time? Were they smiling? Usually, if the artist smiles and has a good time, the guests at the event will reciprocate. And, just to make things clear how this works, if we are hired for an event, you can think of us like a caterer. They hire us by the hour, and then we provide as many shirts as we can within the amount of hours they hire. So if they hire us for 3 hours, we say we're going to paint as fast as we can for 3 hours, and after that time is up, we go home. As opposed to saying, yeah, we'll paint 100 shirts for your event. Making promises like that doesn't always work very well. Because, for example, if the event starts and the guests are out doing something else, there's award ceremonies, they're serving dinner, whatever it is, they're not approaching our table until the last hour. It's simply not possible to paint 100 shirts in an hour unless you have multiple artists, of course. But, so we set up those expectations ahead of time. And so when we onboard artists, we look for personality, punctuality, honesty, attitude. We're in the entertainment business. We're not, like I suppose if you went to an airbrush store to buy a t-shirt in a retail situation, you want to get a quality shirt. Of course, we want to give out quality, but it's not the most important thing. We want our guests to have a good time. That's objective number 1. If our client sees the guests are having a good time, we're winning in the client's eyes. So that's what we aim for. And that's what I look for in an artist above all else.
I wouldn't have thought that. But that makes total sense. That's interesting. So I have a question. When you're onboarding these new leads and you're trying to get them to come through your funnel, where in the funnel do you think is the biggest bottleneck? Where do the most leads end up falling off?
Yeah, we're kind of working that out right now, actually. because we on our website, if you were a visitor on our website and you wanted to get a quote, which often, most people have no idea what to expect with a service like ours because it's so niche. You probably will only hire someone like us once in a lifetime, unless you're an agency, and we do work with a lot of agencies. So obviously the biggest thing on their mind is how much. So we have plenty of call to actions on our website where you can click and get a free quote. And we've developed an automated system. We call it InstaQuote, where they give the basics of what they want, where the event is held, how many guests, what kind of party favors, what they would like, and we offer a selection for them to choose from, the date, the time, stuff like that. I think it's only 6 questions. And then they hit submit, they get an email in their inbox with a quote. And it's a conditional quote because it depends on where the artist is coming from. Right? Hopefully, we have an artist in your area and the travel fee will be 0 or very small. But many times they live in an area where an artist has to fly to their location to do it. So obviously the price would be affected. You'd either have a very large travel quote or a small one, and that would affect the final price. So the system will reach out to the artists automatically. It'll send a text asking who's available, starting with the closest artist. And once the artists are confirmed and available, then we can provide them with a quote, and it's submitted to the guest. And after all of that, I've forgotten what the question was. Sorry,
No
Joey.
worries. I was saying, where is the biggest spot in your funnel that's the biggest bottleneck for you
That's
guys?
right. Okay. So I think right now it might be with our InstaQuote system. It is brand new. It's only been about a year since we've been using it, and we are constantly working out bugs and adding new features to it. But I think a lot of people, it might be in just the language or the way we have it laid out. Like the user experience may not be optimal, and people get confused with this travel quote thing because the first quote they receive is an estimate. It's like going to be a range somewhere to here to here. And then after the artists have confirmed, they get another email saying, okay, we have your final quote. I think that throws people off. So we're doing A/B tests to figure out what's the best way to relay that information in a way that the guests or the visitor of the website will understand. Unfortunately, travel fees can be expensive. I mean, if you got to get a hotel and a rental car and a flight for an artist, it can sometimes exceed the price of the event itself. And that can be a major no from the visitor of the website. There's no other way to do it. I mean, unless, like I said, we build our team so large that we always have someone close by, which is the goal. I think that would probably be the biggest limiting factor for us to convert the leads at this point.
Okay. And last question. If you could give one piece of advice to a younger audience who wants to get into doing airbrush painting and they want to maybe join a company like yours, what would that piece of advice be?
Yeah, whether they're joining a company like mine or doing it on their own, airbrush is another one of those things you just got to put the time in. I like to say you got to put the reps in because I like to work out. And you got to do so many reps that it's unreasonable to think that you wouldn't succeed at it. You got to be comfortable with doing the boring thing over and over again. The same is true for business. I do a lot of things over and over again, lots of routines. The result of that, though, is never disappointing. You become an expert in your field, and you'll shine. You'll stick out because not a lot of people are willing to go through that. Learning how to airbrush is the same way. It's a lot of practice and drills for months before you're, ready to airbrush for the public. And so and we do train artists, and that's what I tell them. I say, are you ready to practice every day for 3 months before you can even talk about doing a shirt for a customer. And I have, like I said, we've trained a few artists, and they were able to do it. Those who were committed could do it in about 3 months' time. There's still much more to learn. I mean, you can learn for a lifetime. Hopefully you would. But in general, I think 3 to 4 months, an artist would be ready to airbrush for us at an event if they put the work in. Above all else, I think it's just that fortitude I keep coming back to.
It's about the reps and consistency.
Yeah.
Not stopping. 100%.
Yeah.
And if there's any agency out there or somebody who would want to join your business or maybe hire you for an event, where could they find you and where could they find your business?
Right. Easily to find if you just search Airbrush Events. We have a website, airbrushevents.com, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at airbrushevents.com.
Awesome. Thanks for coming to the show, Pete. And this has been Nova Talks.
Thank you, Joey.